Hey guys, and welcome to the fish room. I'm Rachel O'Leary, and today we are in front of my 150-gallon River Manifold Hillstream Aquarium. Now, if you guys are new here, this was the very first tank I ever set up on my channel, and it's gone through a lot of manifestations. I can put a link to the complete playlist from start to current in the comment box or in the description below. Today it is time to do some much needed maintenance. Now, this aquarium is set up with an inert gravel, no CO2, and all low light, low tech plants. And I don't dose with any fertilizers because all of the fish in this aquarium come from waters that are extremely dilute, so it's important to maintain that. All in all, this aquarium is very easy to keep running. It's filtered with a corner matin filter and a Fluval FX6 or FX4, and I upgraded the tubing on it to get max output from the filter, and I built a custom spray bar. All of that is documented in the playlist. I thought today we would just get in there, hack back some of the moss that inevitably shows up in all my aquariums, clean the glass, and take a look at the fish. So let's get started. I've gathered together my toolkit, which is just a range of lengths and sizes and shapes of scissors, pinchers, paintbrushes, and of course my all-important coffee. I'm going to turn off the filter on the aquarium and then we'll get to work. Now, before I drop the water line, I'm going to start by cleaning the glass. This aquarium houses a ton of different algae eaters, so I only do the front glass, and I just use a razor blade because it fits in some of the tight spots that I have set up in here, and it's super easy. I'm sure that there are much better tools for the job, but this has always worked out really well for me. This aquarium doesn't have much of an algae problem because of all the grazers in it, but I do get a little bit of green spot algae on the front glass that I like to remove when I do one of the monthly big water changes. This aquarium gets water changes 2 to 3 times a week of about 30%. It depends on how many other water changes I'm doing that day, as well as what and how heavily I'm feeding. Because this aquarium houses a lot of different species, I do feed quite a range of diets, from frozen to dried to some of the gel foods. And if I'm feeding really heavily, especially the gel foods or frozen that will sit in here for a while, I make sure I increase my water changes accordingly. One of the biggest obstacles for me with this aquarium is that it's a taller aquarium and I am pretty short, so it can make it really challenging to really get to the bottom of the tank, and that's where the aquascaping tools really come in handy. Before I start my water change, I'm just going to go through and disrupt some of the substrate in a few spots, especially by the front here where the flow doesn't get to the dirt. This also gives the substrate a fresher appearance, but because the plants have been in here for so long, it really doesn't mess up their roots at all. And because there's so many loaches in this aquarium, generally the substrate gets turned just fine. I'm just using one of the substrate, like generic substrate tools. Just gives it a fresher appearance right up by the glass to do this. And again, turning the substrate refreshes it. Like a lot of people, when they maintain aquariums, specifically with sand, we'll add a sprinkling of fresh sand on top. I've never bothered adding additional substrate to this aquarium. I just do what I'm doing here, which is to turn it a bit every so often, and I feel like it achieves the same sort of goal. And this also will knock any detritus in the substrate, or as you can see here, decaying plant leaves, into the water column to be removed while I do my water change. Now, I don't usually actually siphon the gravel in this aquarium. I use one of my homemade siphons that I've shown you guys how to make, and I'll show you again here in a minute. There we go. It's important as well, as we're going through and doing this, to wipe down the glass so that you don't get massive water spots. So this is my homemade siphon. This one happens to be a little beat up, but it doesn't matter with these fish. It's got a ball valve for me to turn it on and off. Simply put it in the aquarium and start it. And generally, as I'm draining the aquarium, I refill it. Although today I think I'm going to switch out the end of my siphon for a longer one, just so I can do a bigger water change. And over here at the sink, I just use a clip lamp clip to hold my siphon so it doesn't fall out and flood the floor. Now, as the water line's dropping, I'm just going to come into the aquarium and remove any leaves on any of the plants that don't look great. This is a Nubius coffeeifolia, and I just break off the leaves right at the rhizome. This one it's obviously old, and we want to make sure that all of the growing power is going into healthy leaves rather than ones that are not in the best of shape. Now, I tend to not trim too heavily in this aquarium because I keep it so dilute the plants grow really slowly. But I'll pinch off the worst leaves, again, just to encourage growth to the healthy parts of the plant. I'll also take this opportunity to fluff my moss. You can see the dirt that gets trapped in it. And I'll probably pull some of that out. Again, as with most of my aquariums, I didn't deliberately put any moss in this aquarium, but there it is. There's also some wasser tang in here that I did not put in here. And every time I pull this out, it rebounds super quickly. Now, I'm not taking scissors to it because I don't want it to spread all over the aquarium, so I'm simply pulling it out by hand. And again, I'll save it for use in another aquarium. All right, need to move over to that side and trim off some of the bulbitis leaves. And again, I'm going to wipe down, oh, almost fell. I'm going to wipe down my glass. Now, the one place in this aquarium that I did intentionally put moss was at the very top of this matin filter. And this is a terrestrial moss that my buddy Ricky gave to me, and it has gone bananas. There's a huge thicket on top of this filter, and I've been able to transition a lot of it to underwater and move it around the fish room. It gets a bit stringy looking underwater, but on top here, it's really, really cool, and it works as sort of a pre-filter into the corner matin filter to prevent any small fish from getting sucked back there. Now, this matin filter I only clean about once a year. I will take a siphon to it and suck out some of the debris as we're doing our water change here. Now, as this tank is draining, I'm going to set it to refill, and I'm going to have my hose blowing into these plants over here, just to fluff out any of the sort of dusty stuff that accumulates. This aquarium has a really big flow, so I don't have too much of a problem, but I just feel like this flushes out those areas in the wood that are so dense. The fish also seem to enjoy it. Underneath the 150, I moved in one of my totes from outdoors. I moved in some of my sensitive fern or sensitive plant, a ton of the azolla, and various types of the floaters, redroot floater, salvinia, the Asian seed fern, etc., just to see if I can't overwinter it in here in the fish room so that I have it for when I set up my tubs in the spring. I also moved in my dwarf palm and have it sitting in just like a fish bowl of water to keep it nice and humid, and they both share a shop light. So we'll see how this experiment goes. time will tell. I haven't had the best of luck in the past overwintering my floaters, but I'm hopeful that this will work out, and I still see new growth, so fingers crossed. All of these Hillstream species love to play in the water that is being returned to the aquarium. Now, I have a well, so I don't have to use water conditioner, and I simply set the temperature at my tap to match the aquarium. I'm really thankful for my source water, as it has very low TDS and is relatively neutral, which means it's really easy for me to keep things very consistent in my fish room. It's easy to make water harder for my Africans, and it's great for all the black water and South American species I like to work with, as well as these Hillstream guys. Now, once the water level gets high enough, I'll turn the pump back on, but my custom spray bar up there, if I turn it on before the tank is full enough, it just sprays water all over the floor. In fact, one of the things that I have to be really careful of, especially when I'm traveling, is that someone keeps an eye on the water level of this aquarium. Otherwise, it can make quite a mess. And even though I have floor drains, none of us want a ton of water on our floors. So this aquarium houses a whole range of fish. These are a couple of native, U.S. natives, rainbow shiners and yellowfin shiners. There's a bunch of white cloud minnows and a whole gaggle of brachydaniochaetid or orangefin danios, as well as a whole bunch of different loach species, both Hillstream and normal. Down here you can see some of the Cobitis. There's some River Gobies in here, some Soelias, some Borneo suckers. There's one of the River Gobies. They're really pretty. There's a bunch of Stiphodons, and even though this aquarium has been running for 3 years, it's still not fully stocked. And that's because it's really difficult to get some of the species that I want to have to add to this aquarium. Often they're super expensive, difficult to source, and I do a 6-month quarantine for any fish that are being added to this aquarium, because it's 150 gallons, and that would be a ton of medication. And not only that, but because a lot of these fish are unusual, uncommon, and expensive, I really don't want to gamble with their health at all. Now that the water level is up even with my spray bar, I can plug my filter back in. Next, I'm just going to take a small net and catch any of the fine plant matter that's floating throughout the aquarium from me doing my trim. And it's really that easy with this aquarium. If you remember, my friend Alex from Tank Tested was here a little bit ago, and he did a tour of my fish room, but he also did specific footage of this aquarium. And we all know, while it's improving, my production value is not anywhere near his. So if you want to see the inhabitants and everything of this aquarium in really great detail, I suggest you check out his channel, Tank Tested. I believe that video will be coming out tomorrow morning. As always, thank you guys for your continued support, and stay tuned because I'm going to be updating on the new tanks that I planted, the botanicals, the black waters, the nano, and all the things that we've been talking about lately, as well as some new stuff too.